She just wanted a moment of peace in the VIP lounge, a place designed for relaxation and exclusivity. But one security officer decided she didn't fit the image of someone who should be there. What happens when an attempt to humiliate someone backfires in the most spectacular way? You won't believe how a single phone call turned the situation on its head, and ended a career in the process. At Los Angeles International Airport, the usual chaos was in full swing. The main terminal was a frenzy of exhausted travelers pushing through long security lines, pulling heavy suitcases behind them, and clutching overpriced coffee cups as they hurried to their gates. It was loud, crowded, and overwhelming. But beyond the glass doors of the VIP lounge, everything was different. Inside, the air was calm, the lighting soft, and the atmosphere dripping with quiet exclusivity. This was a sanctuary reserved for those who could afford it, a place where stress disappeared behind plush seats, complimentary champagne, and impeccable service. Naomi sat near the floor-to-ceiling windows, her long legs crossed effortlessly, radiating an air of quiet confidence. A half-finished glass of Prosecco sat on the table in front of her, its bubbles rising slowly. She exuded elegance, her tailored black suit fitting like it had been crafted just for her, and her natural curls framing her face like a crown. She didn't scroll mindlessly through her phone like so many others in the lounge. Instead, she was reading an actual magazine, her eyes scanning an article on global markets. She had time, or at least she thought she did. The piece shattered like fragile glass when the lounge doors were pushed open with unnecessary force, drawing the attention of nearly everyone inside. In stormed a woman in a security uniform that didn't seem to fit quite right, her posture rigid, her chest puffed out as if she were preparing to hand out citations for no reason at all. Her name tag read Officer Karen Bennett, and everything about her screamed, looking for trouble. Naomi barely spared her a glance. She had encountered this type before. Loud, entitled, always looking for a reason to assert control, especially when it came to people who looked like her. Then, Karen's voice sliced through the room like a fire alarm. "Hey lady! Do you even know what this place is?" The room fell into a hushed silence. A few businessmen in tailored suits exchanged glances, but no one intervened. Naomi finally lifted her gaze, her expression unreadable, calm, the kind of composure that irritated people like Karen the most. "I do," Naomi replied smoothly, her voice unwavering. "This is the VIP lounge." Karen folded her arms across her chest, tilting her head slightly as if she had just caught Naomi sneaking in through a back door. "And do you actually have a pass to be here?" Naomi exhaled softly. "Not this again. Not today." With measured ease, she reached into her designer handbag, pulled out her VIP lounge access card, and held it up for Karen to see. "Is there a problem?" But Karen didn't even glance at the pass. Her eyes remained locked on Naomi, filled with suspicion, like she was trying to find something, anything to justify her next move. "Are you sure that's yours?" Karen asked, her voice dripping with condescension. "Or did you borrow it from someone?" Now, people were definitely watching. An older man sitting across from Naomi adjusted his reading glasses, clearing his throat as if deciding whether to speak up. He had been minding his own business, but this was impossible to ignore. "Excuse me, officer," he said, his voice polite yet firm. "She showed you her pass. What exactly is the issue here?" But Karen acted as if she hadn't heard him. Instead, she took another step closer, her voice sharpening. "I have every right to check who is allowed in this lounge. So show me some ID, or I'll have to call airport security." Naomi inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Here we go again. She had choices. She could argue. She could raise her voice. She could make a scene. But she already knew how that would play out. Instead, she kept her hands resting on the table beside her glass, her voice measured. "You're calling security because I'm sitting here?" Karen lifted her chin. "I'm calling security because I need to confirm whether you really belong here." Naomi let out a quiet chuckle, shaking her head slightly. Here we go. She wasn't about to let this slide. But Karen, she had no idea who she was dealing with. 'Cause what happened next? changed everything. Naomi understood exactly what was happening. This wasn't about security. This wasn't about protocol. This was something else entirely. The way Karen's lips pressed into a thin, determined line. The impatient tap of her fingers against her arm. She wasn't enforcing a rule. She was exerting control. Naomi leaned back in her seat. Her eyes locked onto Karen's with an unsettling calmness. "Are you accusing me of something?" she asked, sliding her VIP pass back into her bag with slow, deliberate ease. Karen squared her shoulders, arms folding across her chest like a school principal about to hand down detention. "I'm just doing my job." Naomi smirked. "And what job is that exactly?" Karen's expression flickered, just for a second. Then came the words Naomi had been waiting for. "Making sure the lounge stays exclusive." There it was, that extra pause. That heavy implication hanging in the air. Naomi caught it. So did everyone else. She arched an eyebrow. "Exclusive." Karen's lips twitched. "That's right. We can't have outsiders sneaking in." Outsiders. Oh, she said that with her whole chest. By now, nearly every eye in the lounge was on them. A few businessmen had lowered their newspapers. A woman near the coffee station shifted uncomfortably. And then click. Someone was recording. Naomi's gaze flicked to the side. A man in a navy blue suit had his phone angled slightly in their direction. Someone else across the room had their camera up as well. Karen noticed too. Her shoulders tensed. But she didn't back down. "I'll give you one last chance," she said, voice tight. "Show me your ID, or I call security." Naomi exhaled slowly. Option 1, comply. Smile through it. Move on. Option 2, push back. Make a scene. Give someone an excuse to twist the narrative. Option 3. Naomi reached into her bag. "All right," she said, pulling out her phone. "Let's do it this way instead." Karen smirked. "Oh, calling a friend to back you up." Naomi's smile was slow, steady, like she already knew how this was going to play out. "Not a friend," she said, pressing the call button. "My husband." "From airport security," she said. "She called me an outsider." Karen folded her arms tightly across her chest, letting out an exaggerated sigh, the kind that practically screamed annoyance. Like she couldn't believe she was being made to deal with this. "Oh, give me a break," she muttered under her breath, rolling her eyes. But then something shifted. The sound came through the phone, short and sharp. Chuckle. But not one of amusement. No, this was different. This was the kind of laugh that wasn't light-hearted or entertained. It was the type that came when someone couldn't believe what they were hearing. The "are they serious right now?" kind of laugh. Then the voice on the other end dropped, the warmth evaporating into something much colder. "Put her on the phone." Naomi, still perfectly composed, didn't hesitate. Without breaking eye contact, she simply extended the phone toward Karen, her hand steady, her expression unreadable. "He'd like to speak with you." Karen didn't take the phone right away. First, she gave Naomi a look, the kind that said, "You really think I'm going to entertain this?" But Naomi just kept holding the phone out, her patience unwavering, her face betraying nothing. So, with an exaggerated groan, Karen finally snatched the phone from Naomi's hand, shifting her weight onto one hip. Her tone was flat, dismissive, as if she was speaking to some insignificant nobody. "Yeah," she said, sounding unimpressed. For the first time since she stormed into the lounge, she was met with absolute silence. Then, when the voice did come through, it was ice cold. "You need to apologize to my wife. Immediately." Karen's brows furrowed. The smugness in her expression flickered, but she still held on to her arrogance. "Excuse me. And who exactly do you think you are?" There was a brief pause. Just a second of silence. But that second felt heavy. And then, the words that drained every ounce of color from Karen's face. "I'm Jason Wright, owner of the airline you're standing in." The blood seemed to vanish from Karen's face in an instant. Her entire posture stiffened, her arms dropping slightly as if an invisible force had just yanked the confidence right out of her. Her jaw clenched so tight, it looked like it might crack under the pressure. This was not the response she had been expecting. She had assumed Naomi was bluffing. She had believed that Naomi had called someone insignificant, a friend, a coworker, maybe even a lawyer, someone she could brush off, someone whose words wouldn't matter. But Karen had just walked straight into a disaster. And the worst part, she was losing fast. Her grip on the phone tightened. That arrogance, the smug certainty she had walked in with, it was slipping fast. The authority in her voice, the power she thought she had, it was all unraveling like a thread being pulled from a poorly stitched seam. She swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. "I'm sorry, you're who?" she finally croaked out. The response came slow, deliberate, and sharp enough to cut glass. "Jason Wright, owner of this airline." A heartbeat of silence. Then the final blow. "And if you don't step away from my wife immediately, you're going to have a real problem on your hands." The silence that followed was suffocating. It filled the lounge like a thick fog rolling in. Slow, creeping, inescapable. Even those who had been pretending to mind their own business, those who had kept their eyes on their drinks, their heads buried in newspapers, pretending to check emails, weren't pretending anymore. Now everyone was watching. Karen's face turned so red, it was almost impressive. She blinked once, struggling to process what had just happened, what had just been said. This can't be happening. This has to be some kind of mistake. Her mouth opened, but her voice, once so sharp and confident, was suddenly weak. There must be some kind of mistake," she stammered, her words tripping over themselves. The bravado, the authority she had flaunted just moments ago. Naomi, still seated, simply crossed her arms. She tilted her head slightly, watching Karen flounder, the way a cat awkwardly tries to recover after slipping off a windowsill. A mistake. Jason's voice on the phone was dangerously even. "You heard me the first time." Karen's mind was racing. She needed an escape route. Yes, she was no fool. She knew exactly what she had done. And worse, she knew exactly how bad this could get. The headlines alone would be brutal. Airport security officer Harasses airline owner's wife. Racial profiling scandal erupts at LAX. Company in crisis after VIP discrimination incident. Her stomach twisted. She had walked into this lounge thinking she was in control, thinking she was the one making the rules. But now, she wasn't just in the deep end. She was sinking. She licked her lips, scrambling for words, any words. Anything that could fix this. Her voice, so sharp before, now sounded small. "Look," she tried, forcing her tone to sound softer. "I was just doing my job. That's all. I was following protocol." "No." Jason's interruption was sharp, immediate, unforgiving. "You weren't." Karen's mouth opened, but nothing came out. "Let's be very clear," Jason continued, his voice like a blade. "You saw a black woman sitting in the VIP lounge, and you assumed she didn't belong. You didn't check her pass. You didn't ask politely. You jumped straight to accusations. And when she proved she had every right to be there, you doubled down." The truth hit like a hammer. Karen didn't argue. She couldn't. 'Cause Jason was right. And deep down, she knew it. She swallowed again, her grip tightening around the phone like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Jason wasn't finished. "You owe my wife an apology." His voice was low, measured, unrelenting.